In a small rural town in the United States, nestled between gently rolling hills and crossed by a clear, winding river, time seems to slow along the worn cobblestone streets and the century-old buildings whose colorful facades bear the marks of bygone stories. There lives Mrs. Harriet, a 78-year-old woman with snow-white hair and a serene gaze that reveals decades of accumulated wisdom. Her smile is reserved, rarely blooming fully, but warm enough to thaw even the coldest of hearts. Her daily routine, meticulously organized, revolves around caring for her modest wooden and brick home and tending to the profound, almost symbiotic bond she shares with her faithful four-legged companion, Buddy. The medium-sized dog, whose golden coat is tinged with shades of caramel, seems to understand every whispered word from his owner. More than a mere pet acquired out of loneliness, Buddy is the living embodiment of unconditional loyalty and keen sensitivity, discerning even the subtlest changes in Mrs. Harriet's mood and health. For the elderly woman with trembling hands and unsteady steps, Buddy transcends the category of a simple house pet. He is a silent confidant of secrets unspoken to any other soul, an indefatigable guardian who barks at any stranger approaching the rusty gate, and, most importantly, a living, pulsing bridge to a past that grows more distant each day, full of memories of affection and dedication built over nearly a decade under the same roof, sharing the same joys and hardships. The simple wooden house located on a quiet side lane far from downtown holds a lifetime of memories. Yellowed photographs on the walls show Harriet's late husband, her children who left for the big city seeking better opportunities, and little Buddy, who arrived as a frightened puppy found in the rain and soon became the centerpiece of the elderly woman's world. Neighbors have grown used to the sight of both of them walking slowly through the park every morning. She, carefully supporting herself with a dark wooden cane, and he, always attentive, matching his pace to hers as if measuring every step to stay by his owner's side. One especially harsh winter descended upon the region, bringing bitterly cold nights that forced residents to find ways of confronting the relentless cold. As temperatures plummeted, the cutting wind swept through even the most insulated houses. Local news programs issued constant warnings about hypothermia, especially for seniors and vulnerable individuals, urging extra care and mutual support among neighbors. The townspeople, proud of their sense of unity and mutual aid, suddenly found themselves facing challenges that threatened everyone's health and safety. The frigid conditions triggered a kind of isolation, especially for those living alone with limited resources. Streets, normally bustling and welcoming, turned deserted, with doors and windows tightly shut against the howling wind coursing through. Alleys and side lanes bringing a pervasive feeling of loneliness and abandonment. Already weakened by a recent bout of pneumonia, Mrs. Harriet felt powerless against the dropping temperatures. Her bones seemed to creak with every movement, and the persistent cough plaguing her for weeks intensified in the icy air streaming through the cracks of her old windows. The small electric space heater in her bedroom could barely mitigate the drafts permeating every corner. Her nearly empty refrigerator held only a few basic items, insufficient for the coming days, and the cell phone her children had given her lay forgotten in a drawer, battery drained, further isolating her from the outside world. Matters grew worse when a sudden failure in the neighborhood's power system, overloaded by all the space heaters plugged in, plunged her home into numbing cold and complete darkness. The blackout affected not only Harriet's house but most of the neighborhood, hindering rescue and mutual support efforts among residents. On that fateful night, when temperatures sank to unprecedented lows, desperation settled silently in the modest home. Mrs. Harriet's trembling fingers could barely light the few candles she found in a kitchen drawer, and her breath hung in the frigid air, forming wispy clouds of vapor. Afraid she wouldn't survive until help arrived, she huddled beneath every blanket and comforter she had, feeling her body grow weaker hour by hour. Wind howled through the window frames, carrying snowflakes that began to accumulate on the sill, creating a scene both beautiful and menacing. The thermometer on the living room wall registered sub-zero temperatures, extraordinary for the area, and the forecast predicted even worse conditions as the night wore on. With no heat, no way to communicate, and limited supplies, Mrs. Harriet's vulnerability grew with each passing minute. It was then that Buddy revealed the protective instinct that set him apart for his sensitivity and ability to sense human emotions. Though he usually slept at the foot of his owner's bed, he was now pacing the room, sniffing the air, and letting out soft whimpers as if detecting the danger around them. His watchful eyes darted between the door and his trembling owner, who lay under the covers, struggling to keep warm. Without hesitation, and putting his own well-being at risk, Buddy made an instinctive decision that showed the depth of his devotion. Rather than seeking warmth for himself, he positioned himself firmly in front of the bedroom door where Mrs. Harriet lay, becoming a living barrier against the icy draft threatening to invade every corner of that critical space. By bracing his body against the gap beneath the door, he used his own body heat as a shield against the cold, giving up his own safety and comfort for the sake of his owner. Time crept by, with the temperature falling mercilessly. Buddy remained at his post, enduring the cold that slowly seeped into his body, affecting his vital systems. His normally gleaming, soft golden coat began to stand on end, and his muscles trembled, but his determined gaze never wavered. His unconditional devotion was evident in each labored breath and with every heartbeat that slowed by the minute, while his owner, protected by his silent sacrifice, managed to cling to life through what felt like an endless night. Buddy's courageous act did not go unnoticed. His occasional yet urgent bark served as an alarm for those who, despite their own hardships in the extreme cold, still harbored in their hearts that small spark of human empathy and solidarity. Among the first to respond to these cries for help was James, a young carpenter well known for his kindness and willingness to lend a hand. Even though he was contending with his own difficulties from the severe weather, he did not hesitate to investigate the anxious barking in the distance. Emily, a nurse at the local health clinic, joined him after his concerned phone call. Hearing about Mrs. Harriet's predicament and recognizing how dire it was, they gathered emergency gear, flashlights, thermal blankets, and a small portable generator, ready to offer immediate aid. The trek to Harriet's house was arduous, with slicing winds and gathering snow slowing every step. Still, James and Emily pressed on, protecting themselves as best they could against the biting cold, driven by duty and sincere concern for the well-being of the elderly neighbor everyone knew and respected. Upon arriving, they knocked incessantly, but got no reply. Forced to break in through the back door, which gave way under James's shoves, they found the interior of the house nearly frozen, with a thin layer of ice forming on surfaces and walls. Following the faint sound of labored breathing, they discovered Harriet's bedroom. Opening the door, they were met by a sight that would be forever etched in their memories. The elderly woman wrapped in blankets, lips tinged blue and skin ashen, yet her tired eyes filled with a flicker of hope at seeing the familiar faces who had come to save her. There, at the threshold, lay Buddy's exhausted form. Exposed to the biting cold, his limbs were stiff, eyes half open and fixed on his beloved owner in one final act of devotion. His chosen position, intentionally blocking the doorway, spoke of a sacrifice that exceeded mere instinct, becoming an overwhelming testament of love and protection that moved the rescuers to their core. Emily immediately began administering first aid to Mrs. Harriet, wrapping her in thermal blankets and giving her warm fluids. Meanwhile, James used the portable generator to power a small emergency heater. The struggle for Harriet's survival was tense, with moments of uncertainty, but the rescuers' determination, combined with her surprising resilience, eventually produced positive signs of recovery. Buddy's body was gently carried to the corner of the room and covered with a clean cloth, a gesture of respect for his heroic deed. In that heavy stillness, every emotion was heightened, the air filled with reverence for a sacrifice that many humans could never match, despite claiming to be the more rational species. Once Harriet was stable enough to move, James and Emily arranged for her to be transported to the nearest hospital, where she would receive the care she needed. Word of the incident spread quickly through the town, stirring the hearts of neighbors and igniting a wave of solidarity that manifested in visits to Harriet at the hospital, donations of food, clothing, and equipment, and even offers to rebuild and improve her house to protect her from the harsh winter. What started as a simple tale of a dog defending his owner soon evolved into a powerful symbol for the whole community. An example of how, even in the worst adversity, love and solidarity can transform a tragic event into a miraculous catalyst for unity and renewal. People began to talk about that cold night almost as if it were something mystical. They shared how, after Buddy's sacrifice, an inexplicably positive energy seemed to pervade the town, influencing behaviors and awakening acts of kindness that had lain dormant amid the hurried, self-centered habits that had slowly settled over the community. Buddy's story came to represent more than just a touching loss. It became a testament to how compassion, even from a so-called irrational being, can spark a collective revolution of spirit, reminding everyone that life's true essence is not about accumulating possessions or locking oneself away in isolation, but about forming genuine connections with others, whether human or animal. Inspired by Buddy's devotion, the townspeople developed support networks for isolated seniors, set up neighborhood watch programs to ensure no one else would suffer Harriet's fate, and established emergency protocols for extreme weather, prioritizing and rushing aid to the most vulnerable. Young volunteers organized regular visits to the elderly, helping with household tasks, shopping, and basic home maintenance. Local businesses donated safety gear such as smoke detectors, emergency alarms, and more efficient heating systems. Veterinarians offered free checkups for pets of older individuals, recognizing the immense value these companions bring to their owners' well-being and safety. Schools introduced lessons on empathy and community responsibility into their curricula, using Buddy's story to illustrate how small acts can profoundly impact other people's lives. Children drew pictures and wrote stories about the heroic dog, keeping his memory alive and passing on his values to future generations. A strong culture of care and attentiveness took root, shaping the social fabric of the town. Days turned into weeks of spirited community effort, culminating in a heartfelt and solemn ceremony in the town's main square, framed by century-old trees and gardens prepared especially for the occasion with blossoms of every hue. Flyers posted in local shops and announcements on the local radio and social media spread word of the event far and wide. Its purpose was to honor the memory of the brave dog whose unconditional love cost him his life. The ceremony attracted not only local residents, who arrived in their best clothes out of respect, but also Harriet's family, who traveled from afar after years away, moved by the story they had heard. Even strangers from neighboring towns came, inspired by news reports that highlighted the story's simple, yet profoundly transformative beauty. The date chosen coincided with the day Mrs. Harriet was finally released from the hospital, allowing her to attend the tribute for the one who had given everything for her sake. Once a casual meeting spot, the town square became a sacred space of memory and gratitude. Colorful flags fluttered in the gentler spring breeze, and flowers of every shade adorned the center, where a small bronze statue depicting Buddy in his protective stance had been erected by local artisans volunteering their time and skill to immortalize his heroic gesture. This tribute was more than just a memorial. It was the starting point of a deep and lasting transformation in the community, reinforcing the importance of affection and remaining alert to the needs of those most vulnerable. Organized with simple means but brimming with significance, the event included moving speeches by local leaders, choral performances by children singing about protection and unconditional love, and poignant testimonials from people who had felt compelled to change their own actions after hearing Buddy's story. Although Mrs. Harriet grieved the heartbreaking loss of her devoted companion, the community's overwhelming support surrounded her with love and encouraged her to view her tragedy as a catalyst for a new chapter in life. Instead of collapsing under sorrow and isolation, she chose to turn her experience into a mission, dedicating her efforts to helping others in need, becoming a living symbol of endurance and renewal. With assistance from volunteers and resources donated by the community, Harriet turned her now renovated and secure home into a welcoming space for other older people living alone, where they could exchange stories, share meals, and find companionship, effectively combating the isolation that had nearly claimed her own life. In the backyard, where once there was only hard-packed earth, Now flourished a small memorial for Buddy, vibrant with colorful blooms and featuring a wooden bench where she would sit, recalling the moments they had shared. Buddy's sacrifice extended beyond that single event, rippling into every facet of communal life and sparking new forms of expression that captured the essence of the transformative power of his final deed. Local poets wrote stirring verses about loyalty and unconditional love. Storytellers added Buddy's saga to their repertoires, spreading his message to other towns and regions. Artists depicted the moment when the dog stood between his owner and the deadly cold, works that resonated deeply with anyone who gazed upon them. Musicians composed songs celebrating the protective, loving spirit Buddy embodied, blending notes of sorrow for his loss with the communal redemption that followed. These artistic expressions not only immortalized his memory, but also carried the values he represented to those who had never heard of him or his owner, yet felt changed by the story all the same. One of the most meaningful initiatives to arise was the opening of an animal shelter, named Buddy's Home, providing care for stray dogs and cats while they awaited adoption, with priority given to older individuals living alone. Though it began with modest community support, the shelter soon gained regional attention and drew backing from larger organizations. It grew in size and impact, becoming a pioneer in integrating animal welfare and social care. Volunteer veterinarians offered free treatment to shelter animals, while mental health professionals developed animal-assisted therapy programs, taking dogs and cats to nursing homes, hospitals, and rehabilitation centers to bring comfort and happiness to vulnerable people. The benefits of these programs were felt by everyone involved, creating ever-widening circles of compassion. In local schools, Buddy's story became part of lessons on emotional intelligence and civic responsibility. Teachers used his example to emphasize empathy, resilience, and community engagement. Children learned early the importance of watching out for those in need and valuing the bonds of affection that unite us, preparing them to become adults more committed to collective well-being. The miracle that emerged that cold night did more than save the life of one elderly woman. It changed the destiny of an entire town. In that moment, people discovered that even when all hope seems lost, pure, selfless love can break through barriers and rekindle hope in the most desolate hearts. What began as a personal tragedy became a collective rebirth, proving that in humanity's darkest hours, genuine love always finds a way to shine through. Buddy's memory grew into a living legend, passed down through generations as an enduring testament that every act of kindness, no matter how small it may seem, holds the power to ignite a flame capable of warming the coldest hearts and reshaping even what appears unchangeable. His sacrifice was not in vain. It transformed the very essence of a community, binding them closer and leaving them better prepared to face challenges with renewed compassion and solidarity. As time went on, with the seasons bringing fresh hurdles and possibilities for the little town, Buddy's legacy stood firm, an ethical anchor that kept the community grounded in mutual care. Each winter, as chilly winds returned and temperatures dropped, the townspeople increased their vigilance for neighbors in need, holding fast to the lessons learned on that fateful evening. Though still deeply affected by the loss of her faithful companion, Mrs. Harriet found comfort in the lasting impact of Buddy's story. Whenever she saw an older resident receiving a volunteer's visit, or a rescued animal finding its forever family, or even the constant flow of adopters and helpers at the shelter that bore his name, her heart filled with a gentle joy, reassured that her beloved dog continued in some mysterious way to protect and warm the lives of others. And on the quietest nights, when the town's usual buzz faded into the chirping of crickets and the soft rustle of leaves in the evening, Harriet would sit in her blooming backyard on the rocking chair James had crafted for her, a cozy knitted shawl, made by the community crafting group, wrapped around her shoulders. Under the vast, star-filled sky, she would swear she could feel the familiar warmth of Buddy by her side, his damp nose resting gently against her wrinkled hand, his breath blending imperceptibly with the night air. It was as if even the seemingly unbridgeable gap between life and death could not stop such pure, unconditional love from lingering protectively in the world they once shared. In those moments of mysterious communion with what lay beyond, which to her were as real as anything else in her long life, Mrs. Harriet would close her teary eyes, let her lips curve into a faint smile, not from cold, but from overwhelming emotion, and whisper words of gratitude to the breeze that lightly grazed her time-worn face. "Thank you, my faithful friend. Your love continues to warm not only me, but everyone who has been touched by your story." She believed that somehow, in a way that defied rational explanation, those words, offered up like silent prayers, reached that noble spirit who had not only saved her own life but also reshaped an entire community, building new bridges between neighbors and awakening compassion in hearts dulled by routine, all through the simplest yet most powerful gesture humanity has known since the dawn of time, a sacrifice made for love. And so, in this perpetual cycle of renewal sparked by a so-called irrational creature's heroic deed, the bike, small town carried on, forever changed by a lesson that, at its core, demonstrated that true wisdom might lie in the ability to love unconditionally, protect instinctively, and willingly risk one's own comfort for the good of those we cherish, without calculation, without expectation, without regret. Buddy's legacy lived on not as a sorrowful tale of loss, but as a shining beacon of hope that would guide generations through life's inevitable tempests, reminding them that, even in the darkest hour, true love always finds a way to shine. Such was the lasting impact of that fateful winter night, as the little town, anchored in newly affirmed values of solidarity and watchful care, stayed prepared to meet every new challenge. Each gust of freezing wind served not as a chilling reminder of danger, but rather a quiet nudge for the community to stand united, ensuring that Buddy's spirit, his undying act of love, remained the light that would forever guide them toward a warmer, kinder future.